Welcome to Wild West Chronicle, your front row seat to the untamed lands where legends are born and stories of courage, betrayal, and adventure ride with the wind. From dusty trails to hidden towns, from outlaws to heroes, every tale carries the spirit of the West. Strap in, keep your eyes sharp, and let the journey unfold.
The law had him cornered, his guns drawn, ready for one final, desperate fight. But as the dust settled, it wasn't the sound of gunfire that pierced the air. It was a lullaby. How could a simple children's song disarm the most dangerous man in the West and force him to confront his life in a way no sheriff ever could? The answer will truly surprise you. Dalton Graves stood in the center of Redemption Canyon, his back pressed against a red rock wall, both revolvers aimed at the semicircle of lawmen who tracked him for 300 miles across the Arizona territory. Blood soaked through his shirt from the bullet wound in his side, mixing with the dust and sweat that covered him like a second skin. The afternoon sun blazed overhead, turning the canyon into an oven, and vultures circled lazily above as if they already knew how this would end. Marshal Hayes stood 20 yards away, his rifle steady, his weathered face showing no emotion. "It's over, Graves. Drop the guns. You've got nowhere left to run." Behind Hayes, 6 more lawmen formed a wall of steel and determination, their weapons trained on the most wanted outlaw in 3 territories. Dalton's finger tightened on the trigger, his gray eyes calculating distances and angles, knowing he could take maybe 3 of them before they cut him down. After 15 years of running, robbing, and killing, this dusty canyon would be his grave, and he was ready for it. But then, cutting through the tension like a knife through silk, came a sound that made every man freeze. A child's voice, high and pure, singing a lullaby that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. "Hush, little baby. Don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." The voice drifted from behind a boulder to Dalton's left, and he turned his head sharply, his gun still raised, confusion breaking through his deadly focus. A little girl emerged from the rocks, maybe 6 years old, with tangled brown hair and a dress so worn it was more patches than original fabric. She clutched a rag doll in one small hand and sang as she walked, completely oblivious to the armed men surrounding her, to the death about to unfold. Her feet were bare and dusty, her face smudged with dirt, but her eyes were the clearest blue Dalton had ever seen, innocent and trusting in a way that made something in his chest crack like old ice. Marshal Hayes lowered his rifle slightly, alarm flashing across his face. "Get back, child. This isn't a place for you." But the girl kept walking, kept singing, her small voice filling the canyon with a melody that didn't belong in this world of violence and revenge. She walked straight toward Dalton, who stood frozen, his gun suddenly feeling impossibly heavy in his hands. Every instinct screamed at him to use her as a shield, to grab her and bargain for his escape. He'd done worse things in his life, much worse. But as she approached, still singing that simple lullaby, something inside him shattered. She stopped 3 feet away from him, looked up at his blood-covered form and the guns in his hands, and smiled. Not the smile of someone who didn't understand danger, but the smile of someone who saw past it, through it, to something Dalton had forgotten existed. "Are you sad, mister?" she asked, her voice small but steady. "My mama sings that song when I'm sad. It makes the hurt go away." Dalton stared down at her, this tiny creature who should have been terrified but wasn't, and felt 15 years of hardness, of carefully constructed armor, begin to crumble. His hands started to shake. The guns felt like they weighed 1,000 pounds. Behind him, the lawmen remained frozen, none daring to shoot while the child stood so close. Marshal Hayes called out again, his voice strained. "Sweet Pea, come away from him." Come to me right now." But the girl didn't move. She just kept looking at Dalton with those clear blue eyes, waiting for an answer to her question. "Yes," Dalton heard himself say, his voice rough as sandpaper, barely recognizable even to himself. "Yes, I'm sad." The admission felt like bleeding out, like dying, like being born all at once. The girl nodded solemnly, as if he'd just confirmed something she already knew. "Then you should stop fighting," she said simply. "Fighting makes people sadder. My mama told me." And with those words, spoke with the absolute certainty of childhood innocence, Dalton Graves felt something break inside him that could never be repaired. He lowered his gun slowly, the metal scraping against his holsters as he returned them to their resting places. The lawmen tensed, fingers on triggers, but he raised his hands in surrender, his eyes never leaving the little girl's face. "What's your name, child?" he asked, his voice breaking on the last word. She smiled again, that same trusting smile that was destroying him from the inside out. "Lily," she said. "What's yours?" Dalton swallowed hard, tasting blood and dust, and something that might have been regret. "Dalton," he whispered. "My name is Dalton." Marshal Hayes moved forward cautiously, signaling his men to close in. But before they could reach him, Dalton looked down at Lily one more time and asked a question that will haunt him forever. "Where's your mama, Lily? Why are you out here alone?" The girl's smile faded, and her blue eyes filled with tears. "She's sleeping," Lily said quietly. "She won't wake up. I've been calling and calling, but she won't wake up." And in that moment, as lawmen surrounded him and chains were brought forward to bind his wrists, Dalton Graves understood that sometimes the universe didn't give you the death you deserved. Sometimes it gave you something far worse, a reason to want to live when living meant facing every terrible thing you'd ever done.
Before we continue, I need to know, would you have surrendered in this position, or would you have gone down fighting? Drop, fight, or surrender in the comments right now. And if you're enjoying this story, smash that like button. It helps us bring you more incredible Wild West tales.
3 days later, Dalton sat in a cramped cell in the town of Silver Peak, his wrists and ankles chained to the stone wall, the bullet wound in his side roughly stitched and throbbing with infection. Marshal Hayes had transported him here to await the circuit judge who would sentence him, likely to hang within the week. Through the small barred window, Dalton could see the gallows being constructed in the town square, the sound of hammers echoing like a countdown to his execution. But his mind wasn't on his impending death. It was on a little girl with blue eyes who'd sung a lullaby in a canyon and somehow dismantled 15 years of carefully built defenses with nothing more than a question and a song. He'd asked Marshal Hayes what happened to her, where they'd found her mother, but the marshal had only shaken his head grimly and walked away. That silence told Dalton everything he needed to know. Lily's mother was dead, had probably been dead for days while the child wandered the desert singing lullabies to herself, waiting for Mama to wake up. The door to the cell block opened, and a woman entered carrying a tray of food, stew and bread that smelled better than anything Dalton had eaten in months. She was maybe 35, with graying brown hair pulled back in a severe bun and eyes that had seen too much hardness. She set the tray on the floor near his cell and studied him with an expression he couldn't read. "You're the famous Dalton Graves," she said, not a question but a statement. "Killed 17 men, robbed 23 banks and stages, escaped custody 4 times. They say you're the most dangerous outlaw since Billy Bonney." Dalton looked at her, his chains rattling as he shifted position. "That's what they say," he confirmed, his voice flat. The woman nodded slowly. "They also say you surrender without a fight when a 6-year-old girl asked you to stop. That doesn't sound like the man in the wanted posters. Dalton's jaw tightened. Maybe the man in the wanted posters doesn't exist anymore. The woman studied him for a long moment, then surprised him by asking, "Do you know who I am?" Dalton shook his head, confusion breaking through his exhaustion. The woman's expression hardened. "My name is Caroline Hutchins. 15 years ago, you and your gang robbed a bank in Silver Ridge. My husband, Thomas Hutchins, was the bank manager. He tried to stop you, and your partner shot him in the chest. He died in my arms on that bank floor while my 2 young sons watched from the doorway." She paused, letting the words sink in like bullets. "I've spent 15 years raising those boys alone, working 3 jobs to keep food on the table, telling them every night that the men who killed their father would face justice someday. And now here you are, chained to a wall, about to hang. I should feel satisfaction. I should feel like my husband's death finally means something." Her voice cracked slightly. "But all I feel is empty, because killing you won't bring Thomas back. It won't give my sons their father. It won't undo any of the pain. So I came here to look at you, to see if the monster who destroyed my life looked like a monster. But you don't. You just look tired and broken, and somehow that makes it worse."
Wait. Pause for a second. Caroline just revealed she's the widow of a man Dalton killed 15 years ago. What would you do if you were in her shoes? Comment. Forgive if you could eventually forgive, or justice if you wanted to hang. This gets deep, and I want to know where you stand. Also, 71% of you watching aren't subscribed. If you're hooked on this story, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next tale.
Dalton stared at her, the weight of her words pressing down on him like the weight of the chains. He remembered that robbery. Silver Ridge, 15 years ago, his 3rd or 4th job with the Graves gang, back when he'd still been young and reckless and convinced that his rage at the world justified anything he did. He remembered a man stepping forward, trying to be brave, and Jake Morrison, his partner then, dead now from a marshal's bullet in Utah, shooting without hesitation. He remembered the sound of the gunshot, the smell of powder, the way the man had fallen. He hadn't thought about it in years, hadn't let himself think about it, because thinking meant feeling, and feeling meant weakness. But now, looking at Caroline Hutchins's face, at the grief and anger and exhaustion written there, he couldn't hide from it anymore. "I'm sorry," he said, and the words felt pathetically inadequate, like trying to fill an ocean with a teaspoon. "I know that doesn't mean anything. I know it doesn't change what happened, but I am sorry." Caroline laughed bitterly. "Sorry. 15 years later, you're sorry. What made you sorry, Dalton Graves? Was it getting caught? Was it facing the noose? Or was it that little girl in the canyon who somehow made you remember you were human?" The question hung in the air between them. Dalton thought about Lily, about her clear blue eyes and her simple question, "Are you sad, mister?" He thought about how her innocence had crashed through his defenses like cannonball through paper, how her presence had made him see himself clearly for the first time in years, not as a wrong man fighting an unjust world, but as a killer who caused exactly the kind of pain he'd once sworn to avenge. "The girl," he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. "She asked me if I was sad, and I realized I've been sad my whole life. Sad and angry and convinced that making others hurt would somehow make my hurt less. But it doesn't. It just spreads the pain, multiplies it, until everyone's drowning in it." He met Caroline's eyes. "Your husband didn't deserve to die. Your sons didn't deserve to lose their father. And I can't undo any of it. But for what it's worth, Mrs. Hutchins, I spent 15 years running from the guilt, and it finally caught me. Not the law, guilt. That little girl caught me with a song, and now I can't run anymore." Caroline stood there for a long moment, emotions warring across her face. Finally, she picked up the tray and pushed it through the slot in the cell door. "Eat," she said curtly. "I don't want you dying of infection before the judge gets here. You need to face what you've done properly, not escape it through fever dreams." She turned to leave, then paused at the door. That little girl, Lily. Marshall Hayes found her mother 3 miles from where you surrendered, dead for 5 days from heat stroke. Probably got lost trying to cross the desert on foot. The girl had been wandering, singing that lullaby, trying to find help. She has no other family, no one to take her in. She's at the church now with Reverend Michaels. He's trying to find someone who will take an orphan with no money and no prospects. Caroline looked back at Dalton. You wanted to know what happened to her. Now you do. Think about that while you wait for your hanging. She left, the door clanging shut behind her, and Dalton sat in the darkness with his chains and his guilt and the echo of a child's lullaby that wouldn't stop playing in his mind. For the first time in 15 years, Dalton Graves wanted to live. Not because he deserved it, but because somehow impossibly he'd been given a glimpse of redemption he didn't know how to reach. Marshall Hayes visited Dalton's cell the next morning, carrying a folder thick with wanted posters and arrest records. He pulled up a wooden chair, sat down just outside the bars, and studied the outlaw with the tired eyes of a man who'd spent too many years chasing men like him. "I've been reading about you, Graves," Hayes said, tapping the folder. "Try to understand how a man becomes what you became. Thought maybe it would help me sleep better at night, knowing there was a reason, some explanation that made sense." He opened the folder, pulled out an old newspaper clipping, yellowed and fragile. Dalton Graves, age 14, orphaned when his parents and younger sister were killed by the Crimson Raiders gang during a robbery in New Mexico territory. Sole survivor. Spent 3 years after that hunting every member of that gang. Killed 6 of them before he was 17. That's how you started, isn't it? Revenge for your family. Dalton's hands clenched into fists, chains rattling. He hadn't heard those names spoken aloud in years. His mother Sarah, his father William, his little sister Emma, who'd been only 8 years old when a bullet meant for their father found her instead. The memory hit him like a physical blow. Emma singing while she helped her mother with laundry, her voice high and sweet and so much like Lily's it made his chest ache. "Don't," he said, his voice raw, "don't talk about them." But Hayes continued, relentless. "After you killed those 6 gang members, you could have stopped. Could have gone home, rebuilt your life, honored your family's memory by living well. But you didn't. You kept going, formed your own gang, started robbing and killing, becoming exactly what they were. Why?" Dalton turned away, but Hayes pressed on. "I need to understand, Graves, because that little girl in the canyon, she saw something in you that made you surrender. Made you drop your guns when you could have gone out shooting. What did she see?" The question hung in the stale air of the cell. Outside, the hammering on the gallows continued, each strike another second ticking toward death. Dalton closed his eyes, seeing Lily's face, hearing her voice asking if he was sad. "She reminded me of Emma," he said finally, the admission tearing out of him like fishhooks pulling flesh. "My sister used to sing that same lullaby. Used to sing it to me when I had nightmares, when things were hard. She was the best of us, the purest thing in our family, and when she died..." His voice broke. "When she died, I thought the world had shown its true face. Cruel, random, uncaring. I thought the only way to survive was to be harder, meaner, more ruthless than everyone else. I thought if I hurt enough people, If I took enough from the world, it would somehow balance what was taken from me. But it doesn't balance. It just creates more Emmas, more dead children, more orphan kids like me and like Lily. He opened his eyes, met Hayes's gaze. That's what she saw. She saw someone who forgot why he was fighting in the first place. Hayes was quiet for a long moment, processing this. Then he pulled out another paper, a sketch this time, of a young man who looked like Dalton but softer, less weathered. "This is you at 16, Hayes said. "Before you became the Dalton Graves we know now. Look at that face, Graves. Look at it and tell me if that boy would recognize the man you became." Dalton looked at the sketch, at the version of himself who'd still believed in justice, who thought killing his family's murderers would bring peace. That boy had been so certain, so convinced that violence in the name of righteousness was different than violence for its own sake. But somewhere between that boy and this man, the line had blurred until there was no line at all, just blood and bullets, and the endless cycle of revenge creating more people who needed revenge. "No," Dalton said quietly. "He wouldn't recognize me. I wouldn't want him to." Hayes nodded, as if this was the answer he'd expected. "That's the first honest thing you've said since I arrested you. Most outlaws die swearing they were in the right, that the world wronged them first. But you know what you become. That's rare. Doesn't change what you've done. Doesn't mean you won't hang. But it's rare." The marshal stood to leave, then hesitated. "Judge Morrison arrives tomorrow. He'll hear your case the day after. Given your record, there's no question about the verdict. You'll hang, probably within the week. But I thought you should know, Caroline Hutchins has been talking to the townspeople. Word spreading about what happened in the canyon, about how you surrendered when that little girl started singing. Some folks think it shows you've got a conscience left. Others think it's just cowardice, that you gave up rather than die fighting." He paused at the door. "For what it's worth, Graves, I've chased outlaws for 20 years. Most of them were animals wearing human skin. Men who'd lost every trace of decency. But when you looked at that child, something you broke. I saw it, and I think that's why you surrendered. Not because you were afraid to die, but because you were afraid to die as the man you become with a child watching." Hayes left, locking the door behind him, and Dalton sat with his chains and his memories and the terrible knowledge that Marshal Hayes was right. He'd surrendered not to save his life, but to save whatever small piece of his soul remained. The piece that still remembered Emma's lullaby and couldn't bear to kill in front of a child who reminded him of everything he'd lost and destroyed. That night, Dalton dreamed of Emma. She was 8 years old again, alive and laughing, picking wildflowers in the meadow behind her old house in New Mexico. In the dream, she turned to him and held out a handful of flowers, her face bright with joy. "Don't be sad, Dalt," she said, using the nickname only she had ever called him. "Mama says sadness is just love with nowhere to go. So find somewhere for it to go." He woke with tears on his face, the chains cold against his wrists, and for the first time in 15 years, Dalton Graves prayed, not for mercy or forgiveness. He knew he deserved neither, but for a chance, somehow, to take the love that had turned to rage and redirect it towards something that mattered. He prayed for Lily, the orphan girl with blue eyes who'd sung a lullaby and saved a monster from himself. And he prayed that whatever happened next, whatever judgment fell upon him, some small part of good could come from the wreckage of his life. Outside, the gallows stood finished, waiting. Inside, Dalton waited too, not for death, but for whatever impossible redemption might exist for a man who spent 15 years becoming everything he'd once sworn to destroy. The morning of Judge Morrison's arrival, Dalton was woken by a commotion outside his cell. Raised voices. Marshal Hayes arguing with someone, a woman's sharp responses, and beneath it all, a child's voice insisting on something with the absolute certainty that only children possess. The cell door opened, and Hayes entered looking frustrated and defeated, followed by Reverend Michaels, a thin man in his 50s with kind eyes, and Lily, the little girl from the canyon. She was clean now, her hair brushed and tied with a ribbon, wearing a new dress that was still too large for her small frame. But her eyes, those impossibly blue eyes, were exactly as Dalton remembered, clear and trusting in a way that made his chest ache. "This is highly irregular," Hayes was saying to the Reverend. "He's a condemned man. Having a child visit him is." But Lily pulled free and ran straight to the bars of Dalton's cell, pressing her face between them with complete fearlessness. "You're still here," she exclaimed, her voice bright with relief. "I thought you might be gone. I asked Reverend Michaels to bring me, and he said no, but I cried and cried until he said yes." Dalton moved toward her slowly, his chain scraping against stone, and knelt down to her level. "Lily," he said softly, his voice rough with emotion he couldn't hide. "You shouldn't be here. This isn't a place for you." She shook her head stubbornly. "You're here, so it's okay for me." The simple logic of childhood, impossible to argue with. Behind her, Reverend Michael spoke apologetically. "I'm sorry, Marshal. She's been asking about him since you brought her to the church. Says he needs someone to sing to him because he's sad. I tried to explain that he's done bad things, but she won't listen. Finally, I thought maybe as she saw him in chains, saw that he's locked up, she'd understand and move on." But as Lily looked at Dalton to the bars, her expression wasn't fear or understanding of his crimes. It was pure, uncomplicated concern. "Are you hurt?" she asked, noticing the bandage at his side where the bullet wound still ached. "Does it hurt bad?" Dalton's throat tightened. "I'm okay, sweetheart. Don't worry about me." But Lily reached through the bars and gently touched his hand, her small fingers impossibly soft against his calloused, scarred skin. "Reverend Michaels says my mama isn't coming back," she said quietly. "He says she went to heaven, and I'll see her again someday, but not now. He says I'm an orphan, which means I don't have a mama or papa anymore. Are you an orphan too?" The question hit Dalton like a bullet to the chest. He thought of his parents, of Emma, of the family he'd lost so long ago that sometimes he forgot he'd ever had one. "Yes," he whispered, "I'm an orphan too." Lily nodded solemnly, as if this explained everything. "Then we're the same. That's why I wasn't scared of you in the canyon. I knew you were sad like me. Sad people understand each other." Marshal Hayes cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Lily, honey, Mr. Graves has to answer for things he's done. He's going to face a judge tomorrow, and then he won't be able to see visitors anymore." Lily turned to look at Hayes, her blue eyes suddenly sharp with understanding beyond her years. "You're going to kill him," she said flatly, "like the bad men killed my mama. You're going to make him go away forever." The bluntness of her words made everyone flinch. Hayes knelt down to her level, his weathered face showing genuine compassion. "Lily, this is different. Your mama didn't do anything wrong. She was lost and sick, and what happened to her was a tragedy. But Mr. Graves, Dalton, he's hurt a lot of people. He's killed people, taken things that didn't belong to him. There have to be consequences for that. Do you understand?" Lily looked from Hayes to Dalton and back again. "He surrendered," she said. "When I sang to him, he put down his guns. That means he's done being bad, right? That means he wants to be good now." The innocence of the question, The absolute faith that change was that simple, that redemption was as easy as choosing to stop being bad, broke something in every adult in that room. Dalton reached through the bars and gently touched Lily's face, his hand shaking. "Sweetheart, it doesn't work like that. I've done terrible things. Things that can't be undone. You're singing to me. It made me remember who I used to be, before I became someone bad. But that doesn't erase what I've done. I have to face punishment for my choices. Do you understand?" Lily's eyes filled with tears. "But if you're punished forever, how can you be good? How can you help people and make things better? My mama said everyone deserves a second chance. She said God forgives everyone who's truly sorry. Are you truly sorry?" Dalton felt tears sliding down his own face, unchecked and unashamed. "Yes," he said, his voice breaking. "I'm sorrier than I've ever been for anything in my life. But being sorry doesn't bring back the people I've hurt, doesn't heal the families I've destroyed. Sometimes, Lily, sometimes sorry is enough."
The little girl stood there, processing this with a serious expression of someone far older than 6, and then she did something that shattered every heart in that room. She began to sing, "Hush, little baby, don't say a word, Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird." Her voice filled the cell, pure and sweet and absolutely heartbreaking. She sang the entire lullaby while Dalton wept, while Reverend Michaels wiped his eyes, while even Marshall Hayes had to turn away to compose himself. When she finished, Lily looked at Dalton through the bars and said, "My mama sang that to make me feel better when things were scary. Now I'm singing it to you because you're scared too. And when they do the bad thing to you tomorrow, I'll still sing it. I'll sing it every day so you won't be alone. Okay." Dalton couldn't speak. He just nodded, holding Lily's hand through the bars, memorizing her face, trying to understand how this small child had become the most important person in his life in the span of one song and 2 conversations. Reverend Michaels gently took Lily's shoulder. "We need to go now, child. Say goodbye to Mr. Graves." But Lily shook her head. "Not goodbye. I'll see you again. I promise." She pulled something from her pocket, a small wooden cross on a string, clearly handmade and precious to her. She pressed it through the bars into Dalton's hand. "My papa made this for me before he died. Mama said it would protect me. Now you have it, so you'll be protected too." Before Dalton could protest, before he could tell her she should keep the last piece of her father she had left, Lily was being led away, her small hand waving until she disappeared through the door. And Dalton Graves, the most dangerous outlaw in 3 territories, sat in a cell holding a child's wooden cross and wept like the broken man he'd finally admitted he was. Judge Morrison arrived that afternoon on a dust-covered stage, a severe man in his 60s with silver hair and eyes that had seen every kind of human darkness. He set up court in the town hall, and by evening, word had spread that Dalton Graves' trial would begin at dawn. The gallows stood ready in the town square, tested and approved, waiting for its condemned man. That night, Dalton lay awake in his cell, Lily's wooden cross clutched in his hand, thinking about Emma, about the families he destroyed, about Caroline Hutchins and her fatherless sons. He thought about redemption, and whether such a thing was even possible for someone who'd spent 15 years causing pain. Around midnight, footsteps approached the cell. He expected Marshall Hayes, or perhaps another visit from Caroline. Instead, Judge Morrison himself stood outside the bars, holding a lantern that cast long shadows across the stone walls. "Mr. Graves," the judge said formally, "I'm making an unusual visit because I've heard unusual things about your capture. They say you surrendered to a child singing a lullaby. They say you wept. I need to understand if this is truth or legend before I pass sentence tomorrow. Dalton sat up, his chains rattling. It's truth, he said simply. A little girl named Lily sang to me in that canyon, and something in me broke. I couldn't keep fighting, couldn't keep being what I'd become, so I surrendered. Judge Morrison studied him intently. I've sentenced 43 men to hang in my career, Mr. Graves. Every one of them had a story. Childhood trauma, poverty, betrayal. Everyone tried to explain why they became what they were, but explanation is an excuse. The men they killed don't care why. The families they destroyed don't care about trauma. Justice doesn't care about your sad story. Do you understand that? Dalton met his eyes steadily. I do, Your Honor. I'm not asking for mercy. I'm not claiming my pain justifies what I've done. I killed 17 men. I robbed innocent people. I caused suffering because I was too broken to stop myself. I deserve to hang. But I want you to know that little girl saved something in me. Not my life, but something more important. She made me remember I was human, and I'll die grateful for that, even if I die tomorrow. The judge was quiet for a long moment. Then he asked a question that changed everything. If you could live, Mr. Graves, what would you do? If somehow, impossibly, you were given another chance, what would you do with it? Dalton thought about Lily, about her mother dead in the desert, about the wooden cross in his hand. I'd take care of her, he said without hesitation. That little girl, Lily. She's an orphan now, like I was, like so many kids I've helped create. If I could live, I'd spend every day trying to give her the life I never had, the safety and love that might keep her from becoming what I became. I'd work to pay back every person I've hurt. I'd spend the rest of my life trying to put good into the world to balance the evil I've done. Not because it would erase my crimes. Nothing can do that. But because it's the only thing worth doing. Judge Morrison's expression remained unreadable. That's a pretty speech, Mr. Graves. But words are easy. Actions are what matter. He turned to leave, then paused. Your trial begins at dawn. I'll hear all the evidence, all the testimony. And then I'll decide what justice looks like for a man who's killed 17 people but surrendered to a child song. Get some sleep if you can. Stop. This is the question. If someone who'd hurt dozens of people was given a second chance, what should they do with it? Comment your answer and be specific. What would true redemption look like to you? I'm reading every comment. Also, if this story is keeping you glued to your screen, hit that like button. The algorithm needs to know you're loving this. The trial began with the rising sun. The courtroom packed with townspeople eager to see the famous outlaw convicted. Marshal Hayes presented evidence meticulously. Wanted posters, witness statements, records of robberies and murders spanning 15 years. Each crime was detailed, each victim named. Thomas Hutchins, the bank manager. Samuel Wright, a stage driver. Marion Colson, a shopkeeper who tried to resist. The list went on and on, a catalog of destruction that made Dalton sick to hear aloud. Caroline Hutchins testified about her husband's death, her voice steady but filled with pain. Other victims' families spoke, their grief raw and real. By midday, the prosecution had painted a clear picture.
Dalton Graves was a monster who deserved the worst punishment available. Then it was the defense's turn, though Dalton had refused a lawyer, choosing to speak for himself. He stood in his chains and told the truth, all of it. His family's murder, his quest for revenge that had morphed into something darker, his 15 years of running from guilt and pain. He didn't try to justify anything. He simply explained how a boy seeking justice had become a man causing the very pain he'd sworn to avenge. "I'm guilty," Dalton said, his voice carrying through the silent courtroom, "of everything they've accused me and more. I don't ask for mercy or forgiveness. I ask only that you understand something. Evil isn't born, it's created. By pain, by anger, by the choice to let our wounds fester instead of heal. I made that choice, and I've spent 15 years spreading my pain to innocent people who never hurt me, who didn't deserve what I did to them." He paused, looking directly at Caroline Hutchins. "Mrs. Hutchins, your husband died because of choices I made. Your sons grew up without a father because I was too broken to see that my pain didn't justify causing more pain. I can't undo that. I can't bring him back. But I want you to know that I see you. I see what I took from you. And I'm sorry, not because I'm facing the noose, but because I finally understand what I've been too blind to see for 15 years. Caroline's face was unreadable, but tears streamed down her cheeks. Dalton continued, addressing the whole courtroom now. 3 days ago, a little girl sang a lullaby in a canyon, and it broke through 15 years of hardness. She asked if I was sad, and I realized I've been sad my entire life. Sad and angry and convinced that making others hurt would somehow make my hurt less. But it doesn't work that way. It just creates more sad people, more angry people, more broken souls like mine. So I surrendered, not to save my life, but to save whatever small piece of humanity I had left." He met Judge Morrison's eyes. "I deserve to hang, Your Honor, but before I do, I want to make one request. That little girl, Lily, she needs a home, a family, someone to sing lullabies to her and keep her safe. Please, don't let her become what I became. Don't let her sadness turn to anger. That's the only thing I'll ever ask for, the only thing that matters." The courtroom fell silent. Judge Morrison sat back in his chair, his weathered face thoughtful. Then he did something unprecedented. He called Lily to the stand. Reverend Michaels brought her forward, and she climbed onto the witness chair, her small legs dangling, her blue eyes wide as she looked around at all the people staring at her. "Miss Lily," the judge said gently, "I need to ask you some questions. Is that okay?" She nodded solemnly. "Do you understand what Mr. Graves did? Do you know he hurt people?" Lily nodded again. "Reverend Michaels told me. He said Mr. Graves was a bad man who did bad things." Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Then why do you want to help him? Why did you sing to him in that canyon?" Lily thought about this carefully, her face serious. "Because he was sad," she said finally. "And when people are sad enough, they forget how to be good. My mama told me that. She said we should help sad people remember." The simplicity of her answer, the absolute clarity of childhood wisdom, hung in the air like truth itself. The judge looked at Dalton, then back at Lily. "One more question, child. If Mr. Graves could live, if he didn't have to be punished with death, would you want to take care of you? Would you feel safe with a man who's done such terrible things?" Lily didn't hesitate. "Yes," she said firmly, "because he's not bad anymore. He remembered how to be good. I can tell." Judge Morrison dismissed her gently, and as Reverend Michaels led her away, the entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath. The judge sat in silence for what felt like hours, though it was probably only minutes. Finally, he spoke. "This court finds Dalton Graves guilty of 17 counts of murder, 23 counts of armed robbery, and numerous other crimes against the people of this territory. These crimes demand the harshest punishment available under law. However," he paused, and the courtroom leaned forward as one. "However, I have also heard testimony of genuine remorse, of a transformation witnessed by multiple parties, of a man who surrendered not from cowardice but from a real awakening of conscience. And I have heard a child's wisdom that shames us all. Judge Morrison stood, his voice carrying through the hushed room. Mr. Graves, I am not sentencing you to hang. Instead, I am sentencing you to life, a life of hard labor and restitution. You will spend the next 20 years working to repay every person you've robbed, every family you've destroyed. You will work in the territorial mines, and every cent you earn will go to your victims. You will live in chains, you will live in hardship, and you will live with the weight of what you've done every single day. And if you survive those 20 years, if you prove through actions, not words, that your transformation is real, then and only then will you be released to live whatever remains of your life as a free man. Does the condemned understand the sentence? Dalton stood in shock, unable to process what he just heard. Not death. Life. A chance. Yes, Your Honor. I understand. And I'll spend every day proving I deserve this mercy. The judge's face hardened. This isn't mercy, Mr. Graves. This is justice tempered with the faint hope of redemption. Don't make me regret it. The gavel fell, and the courtroom erupted in chaos. Some people cheering, others shouting in anger that justice hadn't been served. But Dalton barely heard any of it. He was looking at Lily, who was smiling at him through the crowd, and he understood that somehow, impossibly, a child's song had given him something he thought was lost forever. A future. 2 weeks later, Dalton stood in the yard of Redemption Mine, a brutal operation in the Arizona mountains where the territory's most dangerous criminals were sent to work off their debts to society. The sun beat down mercilessly on the red rock and dust, and the sound of pickaxes striking stone echoed through the canyon like a mechanical heartbeat. Dalton wore leg irons and a heavy chain that connected him to 4 other prisoners, men whose crimes ranged from murder to theft. His hands, once quick with guns, were already blistered from the unfamiliar work of breaking rocks. The mine supervisor, a hard man named Garrett who'd lost his brother to outlaws years ago, made it clear from day one that Dalton would receive no special treatment. "You're famous, Graves," Garrett had said on his first day. "The outlaw who surrendered to a little girl's song. Some folks think that makes you soft. They'll test you, try to break you. My advice? Keep your head down and your mouth shut. You've got 20 years of this ahead of you. Don't make it harder than it has to be." The work was backbreaking, mind-numbing, soul-crushing. 14 hours a day in the mines, swinging a pickaxe, hauling or breathing dust that coated his lungs and made every breath a struggle. The other prisoners were a mixture of the broken and the brutal. Some genuinely trying to serve their time and get out, others just waiting for a chance to cause violence. Dalton kept himself, spoke only when necessary, and thought about Lily constantly. Reverend Michaels had promised to bring her for visits once a month, a small mercy that Judge Morrison had approved. That promise kept Dalton going to the first brutal weeks when his body screamed for rest and his mind whispered that death would have been easier than this living purgatory. At night, lying in his bunk in the prison barracks with 30 other men snoring and cursing around him, Dalton would hold Lily's wooden cross and remember why he was doing this. Not just for himself, but for her. To prove that change was possible, that redemption wasn't just a word, but a path you walk one painful step at a time. The first month was the hardest. His body, used to riding and gunfighting but not manual labor, rebelled against the work. His hands bled, his back screamed, his legs barely supported him at the end of each day. But he didn't quit. He thought about the 17 men he'd killed, the families he destroyed, and he swung his pickaxe again and again, each strike a small payment on an enormous debt. The other prisoners watched him, waiting to see if the famous outlaw would break. Some tried to provoke him, calling him names, stealing his meager food, shoving him when the guards weren't looking. Dalton took it all without responding, without fighting back, because he'd promised himself he was done with violence. That restraint earned him respect from some and contempt from others. A man named Carson, doing 15 years for robbery, became something like a friend. "You're different from most of the hard cases here," Carson observed one evening. "Most of them are just waiting to get out, so they can go back to their old ways. But you actually believe you can change. I admire that, even if I think you're crazy." Then came the first visit from Lily. Reverend Michaels brought her on a Sunday afternoon when prisoners were allowed brief supervised visits with family. Dalton hadn't expected to be included. He wasn't family, had no right to ask for her time. But when the Reverend appeared with Lily holding his hand, her face lighting up when she saw Dalton, something in his chest cracked open. They sat together at a rough wooden table in the visitors' area, a guard watching nearby. And Lily talked a mile a minute about her new life. She was living with Reverend Michaels and his wife now, sleeping in a real bed, going to school, learning to read. "I'm learning lots of words," she said proudly, "and I practice writing your name. See?" She showed him a piece of paper with Dalton written in shaky letters. "So, I don't forget you while you're here." Dalton took the paper with shaking hands, his vision blurring with tears. "I'll never forget you either, sweetheart. You saved my life. You know that." Lily shook her head. "No, you saved yours. I just sang. You're the one who listened." The visit lasted only 30 minutes, but it recharged Dalton's determination like nothing else could. As Reverend Michaels led Lily away, she turned and called back, "I'll come every month, and when you get out in 20 years, we'll have a party." 20 years. To a 6-year-old, that was an eternity, more than 3 times her entire life. But she said it with such confidence, such absolute faith that he would survive and emerge on the other side. That night, Dalton wrote his first letter, to Caroline Hutchins. The words came slowly, painfully, his calloused hand struggling to hold the pencil properly. "Dear Mrs. Hutchins," he wrote, "I know this letter can't undo what I did to your family. I know my words are inadequate to express the depth of my regret, but I wanted you to know that I'm working every day to repay the debt I owe. My wages from the mine are being divided among all my victims' families, including yours. It's not much, maybe a few dollars a month, but it's something, and when I get out in 20 years, if I survive that long, I'll spend the rest of my life continuing to make restitution. Your husband Thomas didn't deserve to die. Your sons didn't deserve to lose their father. And I will carry that weight for the rest of my life. I don't ask for your forgiveness. I just want you to know that I see the harm I caused, and I'm spending every day trying to make it right. Respectfully, Dalton Graves." He didn't know if she would read it, if she would tear up unread, if his attempt at making amends would only cause her more pain. But he said it anyway, because it was the right thing to do. 6 months into his sentence, winter came to the mountains with brutal force. The work continued regardless of weather. Snow, ice, freezing temperatures that made the metal tools painful to touch. Several prisoners died that winter from exposure, illness, accidents in the mines. Dalton survived through sheer stubbornness and the monthly visits from Lily that gave him something to live for. She came bundled in a coat too large for her cheeks red from cold, still smiling, still bringing him drawings and stories from school. "I'm learning geography," she told him during one visit. "Did you know the world is really, really big? Bigger than Arizona, bigger than America. When you get out, We should travel and see all the places. Dalton laughed, the sound rusty from disuse. That sounds like a fine plan, sweetheart. Where should we go first? She thought about this seriously. Somewhere warm. Somewhere with no deserts. And no mines. Maybe the ocean. Have you ever seen the ocean? He hadn't. Had spent his entire life in the dusty territories, chasing and being chased, never stopping long enough to see anything beautiful. No, he admitted, but when I get out, I promise we'll go together. Lily beamed, and Dalton felt something he hadn't felt in years. Hope. 3 years into his sentence, Dalton received an unexpected letter. It came on a Tuesday afternoon, delivered by one of the guards who looked at him with something between curiosity and contempt. The envelope was worn, forwarded multiple times, and the handwriting was feminine and careful. Dalton opened it with scarred, calloused hands, his heart hammering. It was from Caroline Hutchins. Mr. Graves. It began, I received your letter 2 years ago. I've read it perhaps 100 times, trying to decide if I should respond. Anger told me to burn it, to let you suffer without acknowledgement. Pride told me you deserved nothing from me, not even the courtesy of a reply. But something else, something I'm not entirely comfortable calling forgiveness, but something close to it, has made me write this. My sons are 16 and 14 now. They've grown into fine young men despite, or perhaps because of their father's absence. They work hard, treat people with respect, and make me proud every single day. I've told them about you, about the man who helped kill their father, and about how you surrendered to a little girl's song and are now working to make restitution. Do you know what my oldest son said? He said, Mama, hatred is a burden I don't want to carry. And my youngest added, if he's truly sorry, if he's truly changing, maybe that's enough. They're wiser than I am. The letter continued. I won't pretend I've forgiven you completely. Some wounds cut too deep for easy healing. But I want you to know that the money you're sending, those few dollars each month, has helped. Not just financially, though that matters too, but knowing you're working to repay what you took, knowing you're suffering for your choices, knowing you think about Thomas and what your actions cost our family, it helps. It makes his death mean something more than just random violence. So I'm writing to tell you this. Keep going. Finish your sentence. Prove that redemption is real. And maybe 20 years from now, when you're released, we can meet face to face, not as victim and criminal, but as two people who both survived tragedy and found ways to move forward. My sons deserve to see that transformation is possible, that people can change. Show them. Show all of us. Sincerely, Caroline Hutchins. Dalton read the letter 3 times, tears streaming down his face, unable to believe that the woman whose life he destroyed was offering him something like absolution. He wrote back immediately, his response simple. I will. I promise I will. That letter became his anchor, proof that his suffering had purpose, that his restitution mattered to someone. More letters came after that, slowly at first, then more regularly. Caroline wrote about her sons' lives, their challenges and triumphs, the ways they were building futures despite the tragedy that had shaped their past. Dalton wrote about his work in the mines, about the brutal days and the small victories, about Lily's monthly visits that kept him human. They developed something that wasn't quite friendship, but wasn't pure formality either. A correspondence between two people learning to live with shared trauma. Other families began writing too. Victims Dalton had hurt who wanted to see if his transformation was real. Some letters were angry, accusatory, demanding more than he could give. Others were cautiously hopeful, willing to watch and wait. Each letter Dalton answered honestly, never making excuses, never asking for more than he deserved. He simply told the truth. He was broken, he was trying to heal, and he would spend the rest of his life making amends. Some people accepted that, others didn't. Both responses were valid, both were earned. Lily's visits continued, the one constant in Dalton's brutal existence. She was 9 now, growing taller, losing baby teeth, becoming less child and more young person. She still sang to him sometimes, that same lullaby that had saved his life in the canyon, and he still listened with tears in his eyes. She told him about school, about the friends she was making, about the nightmares she sometimes had about finding her mother dead in the desert. Reverend Michael says the nightmares will get better with time. She confided during one visit. He says trauma heals slowly, but it does heal. Do you have nightmares, Dalton? He'd never lied to her, so he didn't start now. Yes, I dream about the people I hurt, the families I destroyed. I dream about your mother, about arriving 5 minutes earlier, about being able to save her. But mostly I dream about the person I used to be, and I wake up grateful I'm not anymore. Lily nodded seriously. That's good. That means you're healing too. We're healing together. The simplicity of her understanding, the way she saw their parallel journeys, made Dalton realize something profound. Lily wasn't just a child he'd promised to help. She was helping him, giving him purpose, showing him that caring about someone else's well-being was the antidote to the self-centeredness that had defined his outlaw years. 5 years into his sentence, Dalton received news that changed everything. Reverend Michaels visited alone, his face grave. I need to tell you something, the Reverend said quietly. My wife has fallen ill. Cancer, the doctors say. She has maybe 6 months left. Dalton's heart sank. He'd never met Mrs. Michaels, but he knew she'd been instrumental in caring for Lily. I'm so sorry, Reverend. How is Lily taking it? The Reverend's face crumpled. That's what I need to talk to you about. After my wife passes, I won't be able to care for Lily alone. I'm 68 years old. My health isn't what it was. I've been looking for a family to take her in, but... He hesitated. Lily refuses. She says she's waiting for you. She says you promised to take care of her when you get out, and she doesn't want anyone else. She's willing to wait 15 more years rather than be adopted by a loving family now. The weight of that statement crushed Dalton like a cave-in. Lily was refusing a chance at a normal life, at a real family, because of the promise he'd made where he thought he'd be dead by now. You have to convince her, Dalton said urgently. She can't waste her childhood waiting for me. She deserves a family now, not 15 years from now. She deserves, but Reverend Michaels interrupted. I've tried, so has my wife, so have the potential families. But Dalton, you don't understand. You're the first person since her mother who made her feel safe. You're the one she trusts. And nothing we say changes that. So I'm asking you, please, write to her. Tell her it's okay to be adopted, that you want to have a family now. Release her from that promise. It's the kindest thing you can do. Dalton sat there, chained to the table, and felt the weight of yet another impossible choice. If he told Lily to accept adoption, he'd be abandoning the one person who believed in him, breaking the one promise that kept him going. But if he didn't, he'd be selfish enough to let a 9-year-old waste her childhood waiting for a convicted murderer who might not even survive to release. The choice was obvious. The pain of making it was excruciating. I'll write to her, he said quietly. I'll tell her to find a family, to be happy, to forget about me. Reverend Michaels nodded sadly. I'm sorry. I know what this costs you. That night, Dalton wrote the hardest letter of his life. Dear Lily, he began, his hand shaking. Reverend Michaels told me about Mrs. Michaels' illness and about the families who want to adopt you. Sweetheart, I need you to accept one of these offers. I need you to let yourself have a real family with a mother and father who can give you everything you deserve. A home, stability, love without limitations. I know I promised to take care of you when I get out, but that's 15 years away. You're 9 years old. You shouldn't spend your entire childhood waiting for a man in prison. I'm releasing you from that promise, Lily. Not because I don't care about you. I care more than I can express. But because I love you enough to want what's best for you, even if that means letting you go. Please, sweetheart, accept one of these families. Let yourself be happy. Let yourself be a child without the burden of waiting for me. I'll be okay. I'll finish my sentence and build a life. And I'll always remember the little girl who saved me with a song. But you need to live your life now, not in 15 years. Please, do this for me. With all my love, Dalton. He sent the letter and spent the next 2 weeks in agony, wondering if he'd done the right thing, if Lily would understand, that he'd just destroyed the one good thing in his life for her benefit. Lily's response came 2 weeks later, and it wasn't a letter. It was her in person, showing up for the monthly visit with fire in her blue eyes and determination in every line of her small body. She marched to the visitor's table, sat down across from Dalton, and crossed her arms. "No," she said firmly, before he could speak. "I read your letter, and my answer is no. I'm not going to another family. I'm waiting for you." Dalton felt his heart break and soar at the same time. "Lily, sweetheart, you can't." She cut him off with the authority of someone 3 times her age. "I'm 9 years old. I'm not a baby. I know what I'm choosing. Reverend Michaels and Mrs. Michaels are nice, and I love them, but you're my person. You're the one who understands being sad, being alone, being scared that you'll never be okay again. And I'm your person too. You said so yourself. I saved you. Well, you saved me too. When I found you in that canyon and you looked at me like I mattered, like I was important, that was the first time since Mama died that I felt like maybe everything would be all right. So no, I'm not leaving you. We're a family, you and me, and families don't give up on each other." Reverend Michaels, standing nearby, spoke gently. "Lily, honey, Dalton's trying to do what's best for you. He has 15 more years in this place. That's... I know how long it is," Lily interrupted. "It's 15 years. I'll be 24 when he gets out. That's okay. I'll still be here." She turned back to Dalton. "You don't get to push me away because you think it's good for me. I get to decide what's good for me. And you're good for me." Dalton stared at this fierce little girl who'd somehow become the most important person in his world. And he made a decision that went against every instinct telling him protect her by pushing her away. "Okay," he said softly. "Okay, sweetheart. If you're sure, if this is really what you want, then I won't push you away. But you have to promise me something." Lily leaned forward. "What?" Dalton's voice was firm. "Promise me you'll live your life, not just wait. Go to school, make friends, have adventures. Don't put your life on hold for a convicted criminal serving time in a mine. I'll be here, and I'll write to you and you can visit. But don't let me become your whole world. Deal?" Lily thought about this carefully, then nodded. "Deal, but you have to promise something too." Dalton smiled despite the pain in his chest. "What's that?" She reached across the table and took his scarred, calloused hands in her small ones. "Promise you'll survive. Promise you won't give up, won't let this place break you. promise that in 15 years, you'll walk out of here and we'll go see the ocean together, just like we planned. Because I'm holding on to that promise, Dalton. I'm holding on to you. So you have to hold on too. 14 years into his sentence, Dalton received a summons to appear before Judge Morrison. He was transported to Silver Peak in chains, confused and terrified that someone had discovered new crimes, that his sentence would be extended, that everything he built toward would be torn away. But when he entered the courtroom, he found not just a judge, but also Caroline Hutchins and her now adult sons, Reverend Michael's Lily, now 20 years old and impossibly beautiful in a simple blue dress, and Marshall Hayes, older and grayer, but still carrying himself with authority. Judge Morrison, himself elderly now but still sharp-eyed, gestured for Dalton to be seated. Mr. Graves, the judge began, I've called this hearing to review your case. You were sentenced to 20 years of hard labor, with release contingent upon good behavior and genuine rehabilitation. We're now 14 years into that sentence, and I've received numerous reports about your conduct in the mines. Supervisor Garrett states you've been exemplary. No violence, no attempted escapes, consistent hard work, and a positive influence on other prisoners. Is this accurate? Dalton, shocked and off balance, could only nod. Yes, Your Honor. I've tried to serve my sentence well. The judge continued, I've also received letters from multiple families you've harmed, including Mrs. Caroline Hutchins. These letters speak to the restitution you've made, both financial and personal. Mrs. Hutchins, would you like to address the court? Caroline stood, her sons flanking her, and approached the bench. She looked older, grayer, but stronger somehow, like a woman who'd survived winter and emerged tougher for it. Your Honor, I never thought I'd stand in this courtroom and speak on behalf of the man who helped kill my husband. But Dalton Graves has spent 14 years proving that people can change. The money he sent has helped my sons get educations they wouldn't have afforded otherwise. The letters he's written have given us closure we never expected. But more than that, his transformation has shown my sons that revenge is empty, that justice is complicated, and that mercy has value. My oldest son is studying law now, wants to be a defense attorney. My youngest is training to be a youth counselor, working with troubled kids. They chose these paths because of Dalton, because they saw that people at their lowest can rise to something better. So I'm asking you to consider early release, not because he deserves it. I'm still not sure anyone who killed can truly deserve mercy, but because he's earned it, and because the world needs living proof that redemption is possible. The courtroom was silent. Judge Morrison turned to Lily. Miss Lily, you're now an adult. You visited Dalton Graves every month for 14 years. Do you believe he's genuinely reformed? Lily stood, and Dalton saw tears streaming down her face. Your Honor, Dalton Graves saved my life in that canyon by surrendering instead of using me as a shield. Then he spent 14 years saving his own life by choosing to become someone worth saving. He's taught me that family isn't about blood, that love is a choice we make every day, and that the hardest thing in the world is choosing to be better when everything in you wants to be bitter. He's my father in every way that matters. And I'm asking, no, I'm begging, please let him come home. We've waited long enough. Her voice broke on the last words, and Dalton felt his own tears flowing freely. Judge Morrison looked at Marshall Hayes. Marshall, you captured Dalton Graves 15 years ago. What's your assessment? Hayes stood, his weathered face thoughtful. Your Honor, I've chased outlaws for 35 years. Most of them die unrepentant, convinced the world wronged them. A few change in prison, but revert to crime once released. Genuine transformation is rare. But I believe Dalton Graves has genuinely transformed. Not because prison broke him, but because a little girl's song reminded him he was human. That's the kind of change that lasts. Judge Morrison sat back, considering. The silence stretched endlessly. Finally he spoke. "Dalton Graves, stand." Dalton stood on shaking legs, his chains rattling. The judge's face was unreadable. 14 years ago, I sentenced you to 20 years of hard labor. I told you that if you survived and proved your transformation was real, you might earn early release. Multiple witnesses, including the families you harmed, have testified that you've done exactly that. The law allows for sentence reduction based on exceptional rehabilitation. Therefore, I am reducing your sentence to time served. Effective immediately, you are released from custody. The courtroom erupted. Lily screamed and rushed forward. Caroline Hutchins was crying. Even Marshall Hayes was smiling. But Dalton just stood there, unable to process what he'd heard. Released. Free. After 14 years of chains and darkness and grinding labor, he was free. Judge Morrison continued, his voice cutting to the chaos. However, your freedom comes with conditions. You will remain on probation for the next 6 years. You will continue making restitution payments. You will report monthly to a probation officer. And if you commit any crime at all, you will return complete your original sentence plus additional time. Do you understand these terms? Dalton found his voice, rough from crying and shock. Yes, Your Honor, I understand. And thank you. Thank you for believing I could change. The judge's expression softened slightly. Don't thank me, Mr. Graves. Thank that young woman who refused to give up on you. Thank the families who chose mercy over vengeance. And thank yourself for doing the hard work of actually changing. Now go, live the life you've earned, and don't make me regret this decision. The chains were removed, falling away like dead weight, and for the first time in 14 years, Dalton Graves stood free. Lily crashed into him, hugging him so hard he could barely breathe, sobbing into his shoulder. "You're free," she kept saying. "You're finally free." Dalton held her. This woman who'd been a child when they met, who'd saved him with song, and then saved him again with her refusal to abandon him. "We're free," he corrected gently. "Both of us. Finally free." Caroline Hutchins approached, her sons with her. She extended her hand, and Dalton took it, feeling the weight of forgiveness in her grip. "Make it worth it," she said quietly. "Make all of this suffering worth something." Dalton nodded, unable to speak. The debt was paid. The chains were gone. And for the first time in 29 years, since the day his family was murdered, Dalton Graves felt something that might actually be peace. 3 months later, Dalton stood on a cliff overlooking the Pacific Ocean, the salt air filling his lungs, the sound of waves crashing against rocks below filling his ears. Beside him, Lily held his hand, her blue eyes reflecting the endless water stretching to the horizon. They'd traveled for a week to reach this place, fulfilling the promise they'd made to each other 15 years ago in a prison visitor's room. "It's bigger than I imagined," Lily said softly, her voice full of wonder. "More beautiful." Dalton squeezed her hand gently. "Everything's more beautiful when you're free to see it." They stood in silence, watching the sun begin its descent toward the water, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold and purple. Behind them, on a blanket spread across the grass, were the remnants of a picnic lunch. Simple food that tasted like the finest feast because they were sharing it without bars between them, without time limits, without guards watching. This moment was everything Dalton had survived for everything he'd hoped might exist on the other side of his punishment. Lily turned to him, her expression serious. I graduate from Teachers College next spring. I've been offered a position at the school in Silver Peak, teaching the younger children. I want to accept it, but she hesitated. I want to know you'll be okay if I move there. I don't want you to be alone again. Dalton smiled, a real smile that reached his eyes and transformed his weathered face into something almost young. Sweetheart, I'm going to be fine. Better than fine. I've been working with Reverend Michaels, helping him with the church's outreach programs. There are kids in town who need what we can offer: safety, understanding, someone who's been broken and learned how to heal. You go teach those children. Show them what you showed me, that kindness matters, that people can change, that a song can save a life. That's your purpose. Mine is helping the lost boys like I used to be, showing them there's a path back from darkness. Lily's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. You're going to be an amazing mentor. Those kids are so lucky. Dalton shook his head. I'm the lucky one. You gave me a reason to survive when I had none. You chose me as family when I deserved nothing. Everything good in my life comes from that moment in the canyon when you sang to me. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that gift. They sat down on a blanket, and Lily pulled out the worn wooden cross that had once been hers, now returned to her when Dalton was released, hanging on a new string around her neck. Do you remember what I told you that day in the canyon? When you asked if I was scared? Dalton nodded. You said your mama sang to you when you were sad, and it made the hurt go away. Lily smiled. And then I asked if you were sad, and you said yes. That was the first honest thing I'd heard an adult say in weeks. Everyone kept telling me my mama was in a better place, that everything would be fine, that I should be strong. But you just said yes, you're sad. That honesty saved me as much as I saved you. It taught me that being sad is okay, that admitting hurt doesn't make you weak. So thank you, Dalton, for being honest with a 6-year-old girl when you could have lied. Dalton felt his throat tighten. I couldn't lie to you then, and I never will. That's my promise. For the rest of our lives, whatever happens, I'll always tell you the truth. They sat in comfortable silence, watching the ocean, and Dalton thought about the journey that had brought them here. From outlaw to prisoner to free man. From broken child to strong woman. From a canyon filled with guns and death to a cliff filled with peace and possibility. As the sun touched the horizon, Lily began to sing. The same lullaby, the one that had stopped the gunfight and changed 2 lives forever. Hush, little baby, don't say a word. Mama's gonna buy you a mockingbird. Her voice was stronger now, more mature, but it still carried that same pure quality that had pierced through Dalton's defenses 15 years ago. He listened, tears streaming down his face, and realized something profound. He'd spent 15 years as an outlaw running from pain, 14 years in prison paying for his crimes, and now he had the rest of his life to actually live. To be the man Emma would have been proud of, the man Thomas Hutchins' death had helped create, the man Lily had always believed he could become. When the song ended, Dalton spoke. I wrote letters to every family I hurt. Caroline and her sons forgave me, but not everyone will. I have to live with that, knowing I caused permanent damage that all the restitution in the world can't fix. How do I make peace with that? Lily was quiet for a moment, thoughtful. Maybe you don't make peace with it. Maybe you just carry it, acknowledge it, and let it make you more compassionate. The pain you cause can't be undone, but the good you do going forward can balance the scales in ways you can't predict. That's what Reverend Michaels taught me. Redemption isn't about erasing the past. It's about creating a future that honors what you've learned from your mistakes. Dalton looked at this remarkable young woman who'd grown from a lost child into someone wise beyond her years, and he felt gratitude so intense it was almost painful. "When did you get so smart?" he asked, trying to lighten the moment. Lily grinned. "I had a good teacher. A stubborn outlaw who learned that admitting you're broken is the first step to healing. He taught me everything important." They packed up their picnic as darkness fell, the stars beginning to emerge above the ocean. As they walked back to the small inn where they were staying, Lily asked one more question. "Do you ever regret it? Surrendering that day? Sometimes I wonder if you wish you'd gone out fighting, instead of living through all that pain in the mines." Dalton stopped walking, turned to face her, and spoke with absolute certainty. "Not for 1 second. That day in the canyon, when you sang to me, you gave me something I thought was gone forever, a choice. For 15 years I'd been reacting, running, letting my pain control me. But in that moment, hearing your voice, I chose differently. I chose to stop, to surrender, to try. And that choice led to 14 hard years, yes. But it also led to you, to this moment, to standing by the ocean with my daughter, because that's what you are, Lily. My daughter, in every way that matters. So no, I don't regret it. I'm grateful for every painful step that brought me here." Lily hugged him tight, and they stood like that as the ocean roared behind them and stars wheeled overhead. Two people who'd saved each other, who'd chosen family over biology, who'd proven that the hardest journey, from broken to whole, was possible if you had someone who refused to give up on you. Later that night, after Lily had gone to sleep, Dalton sat by the window of his room and wrote one final letter, not to Caroline Hutchins or Judge, Morrison, or any of the families he'd hurt. This letter was to himself, to the 14-year-old boy whose family had been murdered, whose pain had twisted into rage, who'd spent 15 years becoming a monster. "I forgive you," he wrote. "I forgive you for not knowing how to handle that much pain. I forgive you for making terrible choices because you were broken and alone. I forgive you for all the years you wasted, all the people you hurt, all the damage you caused. Not because it was okay, it wasn't, but because holding on to that self-hatred doesn't help anyone. You were a boy who needed help and got revenge instead. You were lost and made yourself more lost. But you also surrendered when a child sang. You also chose life when death would have been easier. You also did 14 years of brutal labor and came out better instead of bitter. So I forgive you. Rest now. I'll take it from here." The next morning, Dalton and Lily returned to the cliff one final time before beginning their journey home. As they stood at the edge, watching the sun rise over the ocean, painting the water in shades of pink and gold, Dalton thought about Emma, about how she'd loved singing, how her lullabies had once brought him comfort, how her death had broken him, and he realized that Lily hadn't just reminded him of Emma. She'd completed what Emma had started. His little sister had taught him that love was worth protecting. Lily had taught him that love was worth becoming someone new for. Together, they'd shown him that the most important thing a person could do was choose kindness over cruelty, connection over isolation, hope over despair. "Ready to go home?" Lily asked, her hand in his. Dalton looked at the ocean one more time, memorizing this moment. The light, the sound, the feeling of standing here free with his daughter beside him. Then he smiled. "Yeah," he said, "let's go home." They walked away from the cliff together. Two people who'd met in a canyon filled with violence and found a family in the most unlikely place. Behind them, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm. Ahead of them, a life full of purpose and possibility waited. And somewhere between the past that had shaped them and the future they were building, Dalton Graves, former outlaw, former prisoner, now just a man trying to do better, finally understood what redemption meant. It wasn't about erasing who you'd been. It was about choosing every single day to be someone new, someone worth the second chance a little girl's song had given him. 20 years later, Dalton Graves stood in front of a classroom full of troubled boys at the Silver Peak Youth Center, a facility he'd helped establish with money he'd earned working honestly for 2 decades. His hair was white now, his face deeply lined, but his eyes were clear and kind. "My name is Dalton," he told the boys, some as young as 12, all of them angry and hurt and convinced the world owed them something. And I want to tell you a story about the day a little girl's song saved my life. As he spoke, weaving the tale of Redemption Canyon and the choices that followed, he saw some boys roll their eyes, others lean forward with interest, but he didn't stop, because this was his purpose now, to show broken boys that they didn't have to stay broken, that pain didn't have to become poison, that even the worst mistakes didn't have to define you forever. In the back of the room, Lily watched her father teach, her own students from the elementary school having just performed their spring concert. She smiled, thinking about the journey they'd shared, the family they built, the lives they touched. Outside, spring rain began to fall on Arizona's red earth, washing away dust, bringing new growth, proving that even the driest desert could bloom again given water and time and care. And in that classroom, as Dalton finished his story and the boys sat in thoughtful silence, redemption continued its quiet work. One choice, one day, one song at a time.
And that's the story of how a child's song disarmed the most dangerous man in the West. If you made it this far, you're part of something special. Here's my final question. What's the one lesson you're taking from Dalton and Lily's journey? Drop in the comments. I'm reading every single one. And listen, if this story touched your heart, do 2 things. 1, hit that like button, and 2, share this video with someone who needs to believe that people can change. We got more incredible Wild West tales coming. So subscribe and turn on notifications. Thank you for taking this journey with me. I'll see you in the next story. Now go. Live like Dalton learned to live, with purpose, redemption, and love. Peace.